So as Aaron already said, I would like to share some of our story this morning. Now, everybody's story is different. And so some of you, I'm guessing, are here on general interest. Uh, you know about all nations and you came out today to spend some time, maybe to just gain a burden for all nations. Others of you are on a support team and filling that role, including some people from our church. And some of you are members in training or members on the field. In other words, you are training to do Bible translation or doing it. And so I hope my story and this story can be a blessing to you. Sometimes I wished a voice would have just came out of heaven and said, David, go to XYZ. That would have been real nice. But that's often not how God works. And that's definitely not how our story went. There are some people that I've talked to in the Bible translation world with all nations or otherwise that started out and they had a deep burden for a people group. They've been praying for this people group and they just want to get there and translate the Bible for them. They heard about them through Joshua Project or something like that. But that wasn't my story either. There are others that they know who their team is. They know that this brother from their church is serving in this country and they're planning to go there and assist them in some way. And the question of who and where is not a question. That is not our story. And as I've talked over the last couple of years with people from all nations and people in the Bible translation world, it's not often their story either. So I will start at our current time. This is our team. On the right is Pauline Hoover, our team worker. Next to her in the red sweater is Juanita Byler, another one of our co-workers. Next is my family, myself, my wife, Rosine, and our 3 children. And then on the far left, your far left, is my sister, Danelle, which is helping out with childcare, schooling our children, and other logistical type things to help our family with more of a short-term focus. And we were working in northern Mexico among the Tarahumara Indians, or native people. And we have been there for our team, most of us, that has been approximately a year to a year and a half that we have been living there. But how did we get here? We didn't start knowing where we would end up. God did know. As Brother Ron shared just earlier, God knows. My first interest started with an ABT newsletter that came in our mail. And I read it and said, wow, I didn't know Mennonites, or Anabaptists, if you will, if that's more politically correct, are involved in Bible translation. That's great. Maybe I can support them. And right away, I was thinking of financial support. God did not let me stop there. And he gave me a burden. And I started pondering this. At the time, I was a school teacher in one of our church schools. And I started pondering this. Is this something I should be involved in? No, I can't be a Bible translator. But I couldn't forget about it. I was young, married at the time. And after a while, I realized that this is consuming quite a bit of my brain power. I better tell my wife. And so one evening, summer evening, we were sitting out back and I said, Rosine, I've been thinking about this whole all nations Bible translation thing a lot. And we discussed it, and through the next couple of days and weeks, we discussed it. And I remember one of her comments was, well, maybe there's a short-term rule that they would have, but Bible translation sounds really big. God was working in our hearts. We went to a presentation. That was in 2016 that we received the newsletter, end of 2016. We went to a presentation that Brother Jewel was sharing at a church. And we kind of sat in the back and observed. And afterwards, I got a chance to talk to Jewel. And my mind was swimming. At the moment, I was contemplating the longevity of a Bible translation project. It's serious, it really is. And plus, all the unknowns. And really, my Bible translator? Like, wasn't the translators that King James had, like, they had halos around their head as they worked? God gave them a special anointing that they could work. Surely Tyndale had some special anointing far beyond what any other human has ever had. If he was able to translate the inspired word of God that I now read. And I had a lot of questions. In our conversation with Brother Jewel, he was asking what church we're from, and just kind of I expressed my interest in general terms, but he said, well, do you know somebody by the name of Pauline Hoover? I think she's with your church group. And Pauline Hoover, no, I don't know. So we're from the Weaverland Conference, and we have many churches throughout Lancaster County, Lebanon County, Pennsylvania, and across the US, really. And so, I don't know Pauline Hoover. Well, Joel mentioned she's a member with us, a member in training. She's just recently started training. Well, that was interesting. Putting that thought on the shelf, we finished up our conversation, we drove home, and I think both Rosina and I, my wife and I, both felt we're never going to be able to do this. There's no way. And so there was some time of wrestling together as a couple. I felt like I already had the burden, and my wife was slowly trying to capture a vision for what I already had. But together, we prayed about it, we thought about it, and later on, in 2016, that year, we did start more formally talking to ABT. Switching back over to my teammate, Pauline. She had developed an interest in ABT while working at Shining Light Children's Home in Mexico, and started having a burden for the unreached. Praying about it, started a few conversations with her home church, some conversations with ABT, some of the church leaders that she felt, and other members that she felt comfortable working with. She started some training in 2016, and so she was indeed a member when I talked to Jewel. But there was a question, and that was in her mind, and that was, as we heard from Brother Ron, All Nations has a different perspective on partnering with the home church. And how, as her as a single person, relating to a whole conference, a very large conference, how is she supposed to go back to the conference and drum up a vision for church planting among the unreached? But she was trying in her feeble efforts. And I got an email from, I believe it was Brother Jewel again, and he said, Pauline's trying to line up a meeting with the ministry of your church. Maybe you want to be involved in this. And my response was, of course I want to be. When, how can we get in contact? And that was at the point that we got in contact. My wife and I sat down with Pauline one evening, and we started a relationship of learning to know each other and considering what God could do through us. In December 2016, we did have a meeting with some of the ministry. I remember being a little bit, I felt naive about everything I was getting into. I had no formal training on Bible translation, just a little bit of input from All Nations and the staff there. And all of a sudden, I'm showing up at a meeting that I haven't even arranged. to present my case that we want to go to the unreached. I was blessed by that meeting. There was support. There was questions. One of the questions was, what about your family? If you're talking of living long-term, what about your children? How are you planning to raise them on the mission field? How does that look? Well, nobody had answers, of course. And we went around and talked. Through it, the outcome of that meeting, as we talked and thought, one of the outcomes was that why don't we select several men, at least through the training process, to give you some oversight and maybe some financial help as you'll be spending significant amount of time. Why don't we find several men to do that? And so one ordained brother assigned another ordained brother to see after that. And that was the start of a support committee. Jumping forward another half year, we had another meeting in May of 2017. And this time, we had several men, 5 of them, that were willing to be a support. And I think each of them had various understandings of what that looked like. And I didn't know what that looked like either. And so we came to this meeting. There was quite a few of our church ministry, the ones in church leadership that were together. And those 5 brethren came as well. And here we come. And all of a sudden there was this large crowd. And I was looking around feeling very intimidated. Who am I to pull together a crowd like this? But God was working in a way that I didn't fully understand. That night, the church appointed these 5 brethren to look over this team and this initiative. And that was a very wise decision, I believe, from our church leaders' perspective, and I believe it was God's leading that would happen. With a large church conference, and some of you may know Weaverland Conference, or Horning, as some of you may know us as, we haven't done a lot of mission work. To get a conference like that for all the ordained men to agree to send David Sensenig to the field, and every last person agreed from a church that hasn't done a lot of mission work historically, would have been a large deal, and possibly would have never happened in my lifetime. I don't know. But as we talked and as we signed this committee, God opened up the doors that we could work together. We could relate to the ministry, but these brethren were then responsible to take oversight of training and other such things. So that night of May 22nd, 2017, I left thankful, praising the Lord, but there were several of the men I didn't even know very well. Others I knew personally, and I was excited to work with them. That evolved over that summer. The committee ended up being a little bit more structured like a board, and we have titled them Word of Truth Ministries. And so as Brother Ron shared on the support committee, it's not quite a mission board where this is the mission board for Weaverland Conference, but this is a board that is supporting our team, specifically my family and Pauline Hoover, in the work that we were at that point just planning to do. We didn't know anything about it. So that's the story of bringing a support committee together. I'm glad that some of them are here today, and I have enjoyed working with those brothers. I'll expand more on that in a little bit. Now, where should we go? We're starting training. in the beginning, I was told training might take 2 to 4 years. Once again, ABT was in a very beginning stage. What did training look like? They were still wrestling through some of those things, working at setting up requirements. It was fairly stabilized when I got started in 2016, 2017. But they were still wrestling through some of those things. So we had some time to think about where we should go. But especially, I know for my family, we started praying about that, thinking about that, asking the Lord, where should we go? I'm going to take a little bit of a side note here. Some of you are in training now. I think if I would ask you, at least this was my story, for you as men, sometimes it shouldn't be, but our identity is in what we do. And so you come to work, you come to church, and you meet a new brother that you never met before. Oh, how are you? Oh, what's your name? Oh, okay. Where do you live? Oh, okay. What's your job? What do you do for a living? Is that question familiar to you? Now, what was I supposed to say? I was a school teacher and I stopped school teaching. I was helping a family business part-time, but that was really, really part-time. And sometimes it was no time at all. I was a student. And that is strange. And what are you a student for? So, well, I'll just say I'm going to the mission field. You know what's the next question they ask? Where are you planning to go? Who are you serving with? I don't know. I'm a man without a job. And I don't even know where I'm going. But I'm going to be a missionary someday. You brothers in training and sisters as well, get used to it. Now, flipping to you guys that are support people, realize that they're going through that. For me, I wouldn't say it was just a huge ordeal, but it was there. Anyway, that's a side note. We were at a training school in North Dakota known as SILUND, or Summer Institute of Linguistics. And there was a poster on the wall. That Sunday morning, I went down. I don't know the date, but I went down and I saw this poster and I thought, that's interesting. I went back up. It was kind of a dorm room style thing. There was pegboards, and probably not within a half an hour, my wife came up to the room and said, "Did you see that poster down there?" We were very busy at that time. It was a Sunday morning. The studies were intense, and we didn't have much time to talk, but she goes, "Did you see that poster?" I said, "What poster?" "Well, the one about Canada." And I said, "Yeah, I did." So there's Bible translation work in Canada? Was kind of our question that resonated with us. And we both went down there, I think, and read that poster quite carefully. And yes, that is what that poster was advertising, that there are a few needs in Canada among the First Nations people, or the American natives of the US and Canada, that need a Bible translation. I don't know what all my thought process was, but we started considering that and saying, maybe God is calling us to Canada. I know one factor was our church had been involved. Some brothers from our church had been involved in Canada, and other singles had been there as well, specifically through Northern Youth programs and sometimes on separate ministries. And so I was familiar with Canada. I knew other people had went. Maybe this is a easy way, not just looking for the easy way, but a way that us as a church that hasn't sent very many missionaries can send a missionary maybe a little bit closer home, something that people can connect with and it resonates with the people. I know that was at least one thought. So we told Pauline, we prayed about it. We told our support committee, we prayed about it. But now, how do we go from here? So there was an email address on the bottom of that, and I contacted Brother Bill from Canada, and he was with SIL, Wycliffe, and we talked about the needs, and he listed 3 needs. 2 of them were just partial Bibles that he felt was a need at that point. The one was they need a New Testament, Old Testament, we don't know. We really don't know much about this need, but we think it's a need. Okay. So what do we do from here? And so there was some email exchanges, and he tried to get me in contact, but he really didn't have many contacts in the area. God provided a brother from our church that said, I think you should talk to Northern Youth Programs, or Beaver Lake Camp, as they're sometimes known as. So I contacted Brother Norm Miller there and started some conversations with him. I remember one evening we had a video call with him talking about how this could work. And as we talked, he said, just come. We'll try to get you in that community, or one of those communities. There was 3 that we were looking at, but just come. And so Northern Youth Program has a summer program that they send a lot of times youth, but sometimes families, to a community to do evangelism, children's Bible school for about 6 weeks over the summer. And so we went. God opened up the door. It was a miraculous way of opening the door. We waited for several days, hoping that we could get into Attawapiskat, a town in the Northern Ontario region. And it just didn't open up. And all of a sudden, we were sitting here waiting. All the other teams had went out to their resort, their reservations to do ministry. And there we sat. Where are we going to go? They didn't get back to us. We don't have any other contacts. And Brother Norman, his desperation to get us there and his hard work, made a contact. God opened up the door. We flew into Saskatchewan, Ontario, and called the fella that we thought was responsible. And he said, why are you here? We got word from one of the guys in your town that you have a house available for us and we're coming for the summer. Really? And I remember Brother Norm saying, well, if you don't, we can just go back again. That's fine. No, Brother Norm, we want to come here. We want to research the need. We don't want to go back home. They found a house for us. We stayed the summer for 6 weeks, slightly less because of our delay. And we wanted to feel the need. We had several goals. Some of those goals was connecting with church. On the left is a picture of us with a church family. The husband was not a Christian, but the wife and the daughter were. And they were a great blessing. There was various other people that we connected with. We wanted to see how much are they using the language. Are there churches there, and how are the churches doing? And so that was our first trip. That was that was summer of 2018. We came home from that summer. For myself, I was feeling pretty excited. I felt like this possibly is a pretty good way to move forward. I think there's opportunity here. Yes, there are other churches in town, Anglican, Roman Catholic, or otherwise. But surely there's a way of moving forward. We heard language use. People my age definitely use the language. Now, the little ones, well, not so much. Maybe Grandpa would talk to them in the Eastern Swampy Cree language, as their language is called, but they often responded in English. Moving on. We felt positive. We took an exploratory trip with several of the brothers from Word of Truth, our support committee, and Aaron Kreider was along. We even had an offer, come do a Bible translation for us from the one town, but something didn't quite seem right there. We had some reservations. In the town that we had visited in the previous summer, just a few months before, there was no openness. There was no house available that we could move into. There was no way to get there. And we came home from that trip and we started praying and strategizing. So if we are going to do this, if our focuses are truly on Canada, how are we going to get there? How are we going to immigrate? We had a list of questions. What's the logistics to get us there if this is really a need? And we started pondering that. But Pauline started having some reservations. We spent that summer with Pauline Hoover as well and my family. We did it together. And she started to have some reservations. Is this really where she wants to spend her life? How does this work? Then in January 2019, we were traveling through the area and All Nations wondered if we want to come and stop in and just have a little meeting while we're traveling through, and we did. And they started raising some questions. There's churches there. We're not even sure how much they use the language, and if this is really a translation need is a little bit questionable. So if we're going to plant churches and we're going to translate the Bible, the one is out, it's been done, there's 3 churches in town already. The other one, we're almost gonna have to get there and really do a large survey project to find out the need of a translation. And so we fumbled forward, as one of the brothers from our support team said, and we kept on fumbling forward. What was right? So Pauline had an interest in Mexico. ABT had some connections with the Elisha Byler family in northern Mexico. And Pauline started planning a trip, and there was a short time that even though we're from the same church, Pauline was considering Mexico and we were considering Canada. But as things evolved and slowly we talked and we prayed, there was the suggestion that we should check out one other situation before deciding on Canada. Just go somewhere else. Just see one other place in the world that might need a Bible and see how they compare. See what the Lord speaks to us through that. And so we went in the spring of 2019 to the Tarahumara region, Copper Canyon, if you will, in northern Mexico, a very mountainous region. It was my first time being out of country other than US and Canada, and my eyes were opened. They truly were. We enjoyed our time with Juanita's family. At that time, Juanita already started having some interest in not necessarily Bible translation, but can't I teach my friends, the people that I grew up with, how to read? Can't they be literate like I am? And so she was starting some conversations with All Nations. And we came. It was my family. It was Pauline. Sister Ayana was along as well to research the need. And here we came. We spent almost 2 weeks there. And we went home again. There were several things that were impressive. We went to visit their homes several times. It required hiking, required sitting down. We got to eat some of their food. I got to see a Christian brother, the smile radiating on his face that before was a drug addict. But as Elisha said, he sort of knows Spanish, pretty good, except when it comes to Bible terms. Our Bible has some very big terms in. And if it's not your first language, you're going to be hard to understand. We went to church. That is the picture on the right. I didn't see very many Bibles. 2 reasons. There is no Bible in their dialect. And even if there was, many of them didn't know how to read. Many of the ladies do not know Spanish. Yes, maybe a few words, but hi, how are you doing? It's nice today. Doesn't help you understand your Bible. That was the spring of 2019. We came home. In several months, we were in Canada for the second trip. This time we went slightly further north to Fort Severn, spend a summer there. But as we left, we understood that maybe our sun was setting in Canada. I think all of us, as I corresponded with Pauline, as my wife and I talked and prayed, as I talked with Word of Truth, the door didn't quite seem open in Canada for our team to move there. So we compared the situations, we came home, and now what? We have to make a decision. Is Mexico where we go? And so we started talking, and we talked, and we prayed. Finally, we were together in a meeting on October 4th of 2019. For my family, we had now been to Canada. We had now been to Mexico. Out of the 5 brethren that are on the support committee, 4 of them had been to Mexico. 2 of them had been to Canada, specifically on a research trip. And there was a decision to make. Having the support team, knowing what the situations were, actually seeing the situation themselves was a huge part of this decision. We decided to switch our focus. We decided, instead of Canada, we're going to switch to a small town of Wawayvo, Mexico. So, that is where we are today. God did not speak with an audible voice, but he used brothers, sisters. He used very small, minute events, and he directed. God knows. Now, just a few final reflections. I would have felt very impulsive from the beginning of one year. Sorry, let's switch around. From the fall of one year to the fall of the next year, we went from not even considering Mexico to switching to Mexico. But do you feel impulsive when you have other brothers around saying, yeah, doors are opening up here? Isn't this a good opportunity for us? Isn't this working out for us? And when we could all say yes in unity, it was a blessing for me. It wasn't my decision. They probably don't feel like it was their decision either. It's where God wanted us, I truly believe. Was Canada a waste? Was it a waste to even go there? I don't think so. We had some time of teaching. Each of the summers we were there. Northern Youth Programs does a good job of front-loading you with information that you need to work together as a team. We got the experience to spend that time with Pauline Hoover. And so that was a blessing to spend some time in Canada. I don't believe it was a waste. Maybe it was a divine appointment that God knew we needed some lessons to learn and knew that we need to see 2 situations before we could make a wise decision. So, Juanita joined in spring of 2019. Preparation for us started as far as Spanish classes and other things. Fall of 2020, we got together as a team for the first time. My family, Pauline Hoover, Juanita Byler. The end of that time, Juanita's parents, Elisha Bylers, joined us. And it felt like we were becoming a team. And now, we're living in Wawayvo, Mexico. I appreciate the team that we're working with. It's God's story. I don't think it's done yet. We don't see the future clearly, but we see the past slowly unfolding. And so this is our story. I want to share a verse yet. In Psalms 25, the psalmist reflects, "Show me thy ways, O Lord. Teach me thy paths. Lead me in thy truth and teach me. For thou art the God of my salvation. On thee do I wait all the day. God does direct our paths. Thank you for listening.